Hey guys, I'd like to produce a video tonight on memorizing scale patterns. The other night I made a video about the greatest thing you should learn on the guitar, which in my opinion is the scale pattern spanning the whole neck of the guitar. Because for my money, that's your best investment of time because it has the most payoff down the road for you. If you learn that scale pattern, there's so much that you learn off that one pattern, it's ridiculous. So that's where you should spend your time. This video is going to be about memorizing scale patterns. How can you do it? What are some techniques you can use? So I plan to make other videos about drilling on the scale patterns, techniques you can use, and expanding your knowledge on the scale patterns. This one's going to be purely about memorization. So that being said, the first technique that you can use to memorize scale patterns is an old school one, and it's just writing down the pattern for yourself that you're going to be practicing with. So I picked one pattern, I picked this E pattern, and if you looked at my video from the other night, and I can link to it, this is from the caged system. This is called the E pattern. It's the one I recommend everyone start with first to just get one pattern under your belt. So what I did was I grabbed a pen and a notebook and just wrote it down. And this had the effect of me going over it slowly, making sure my drawing was correct. So in the process of doing that, I started to memorize what this pattern looked like. Not only that, I have my notebook now. I can carry it with me throughout the day and reference it if I need to. I don't even need my guitar with me. I could just pick it up. If I want to look at my pattern again, go over it again, I could do that really easily at any time during the day now because of this drawing that I have. And you can do that with a printout too, but the actual act of drawing it is more helpful than printing it, in my opinion. Let's look more closely at this drawing right now. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just study the pattern, just take an analytical look at this pattern, what I'm going to be working with. So when I drew the pattern, I drew it as though the guitar neck was being held like this right in front of me. So this pattern is going to overlay the neck going that way. So there's the headstock, and then that's going to be the direction of the pattern. So it's important to know which direction you're drawing that pattern. And so I made little indicators here. The nut side is there, the bridge side is that way, and here you have your string. So your fat E string is up here on the top, and your thin E string here is on the bottom. So the first thing you want to take a look at is where the roots are of this pattern. So I made them in open circles. So you're going to have one right there on the top, of course a mirror image here on the bottom E, then you're going to have one right here, 2 frets over on that D string. That's where a root's going to be. Now you want to look at there's many patterns going on within each of these patterns. So the first one you can take a look at is the first string. You have 2 dots together here, so that's a half step, and then you have 2 apart, so that's a whole step. So if you just look at this row, it's 2 together and 2 apart, so a skip there. Okay, so that can be considered a mini pattern in itself. If you take a look, that pattern happens on the E string, it happens on the A string, and of course on this bottom E string. So the next little mini pattern here is 2 apart, so a whole step, and then 2 together. It's the exact opposite of the first one we looked at. So that pattern happens again on the string right below it. So if I can just look at it analytically like that, I've broken it down. So if I know this little pattern, I can just do that same thing on 3 strings. I've got 3 strings done. That next pattern happens on these next 2 strings. And then the only oddball string here is this little skip right there that happens. So there's 2 notes that happen on the B string. It's kind of the exception of this whole pattern. Every other string has 3 going on except for this. Furthermore, I can see that vertically I have a row of dots right here. Every string is hit on this side of the pattern. Okay, and that's not the case here because of this oddball on the B string. So this is just a way to break down the pattern and help myself in memorizing the pattern by breaking it down even further. That way it's not so daunting. That way, I'm not looking at each string and each little dot here as a separate thing. I'm breaking it down into chunks that are easily digestible. Okay, the first thing when you're settling down with the guitar and you're ready to practice your pattern on the guitar is you want to pick a position to play it in. So you can see that the root here is this dot right here, this second one. So I'm going to set this so that I'm playing it in a G. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this here on the 3rd fret. So I'm going to take my 4 fingers and line them up with frets 2 through 5. Okay, and that's going to match up with my pattern. Because if you look at this pattern here, it's 4 wide basically. So that means each of my fingers is going to take a fret. So that root note is going to be there on the 3rd string. And then the first note of the pattern is going to start here on the 2nd string. So when I want to practice my pattern, that's how I want to set it up. I'm picking a key, I'm picking the key of G, so it's going to be in the key of G major. Okay, so that's the pattern, that's how it's going to sound. Now I want to start to work the pattern. So a good way to memorize the pattern, because I don't know the pattern yet, theoretically, is I want to take the first 3 or 4 notes of the pattern and just repeat them and go up and down on that small piece of the pattern. So if I take the first 4 notes, I'm taking these 3 top notes and then this next note here on the 2nd fret of my 2nd string. So I'm going to play those notes. So it doesn't matter what you're doing with your right hand at this point. It doesn't matter if you use a pick or you're going to finger pick it. The important part is what's going on with your left hand, because this is all about memorization at this point. So I'm going to play those notes in an ascending and then descending back down to the first one. So up and then down. Okay, so I go up, down. So the key when you're doing something like this is to do it as slowly as it takes for you to be accurate. You don't want to work on speed. If what I just did there was too fast for you to do cleanly, then do it slower. And if you still can't do it cleanly, do it even slower and slower. The key is to go slow, slow, slow at first until you can do it cleanly. So work on proper fretting and getting a proper sound out of each note and go over it and over it. So keeping it clean is something that you should always do regardless of what the exercise is. Now this exercise is mainly for memorization purposes, but you want to keep that discipline of going slowly and keeping it clean. Okay, so how the exercise progresses is you add the next note and then go back down. And you keep drilling this. And the point is, you don't have to put a number of reps on it. This isn't about reps, it's not about getting stronger, it's about memorization. So if you can get comfortable on a shorter amount of reps, then you do what's comfortable for you to memorize it. If you feel like you got that note down, now you can add the next note, then add it. The goal is to get through the entire pattern by adding one note at a time. So eventually you want to make it all the way down to this high note. The next expansion on that exercise is you're starting in this direction, so you're starting in your high strings and working to the low strings. Next is to work up the neck. So you start with and then add a note there. So then my progression becomes working in the upwards direction. And eventually I want to make it, again, all the way across. So by the time the exercise is complete, I'm playing the entire scale pattern again, except I'm starting this way. So it's basically a full circle, because when you start from this way and work back down, it becomes the same thing in essence. So that's why it's a memorization exercise, because you're just challenging your mind and building some muscle memory at the same time, but you're going in the opposite direction when you start on this side with the high E string. One more technique that'll help you memorize these scale patterns is vocalizing with your guitar. And what I mean by that is you using your voice to sing the same note that the note that you're producing at the time you're producing it. So boom. So I'm making that note with my voice, and in the act of doing that, it helps to memorize the scale pattern and the sound that's associated with it at the same time. So just moving up the scale pattern, it doesn't matter what syllable you use, just kind of get the pitch. A lot of people dread this exercise because they don't like to sing, but this is very useful for helping to memorize. I mean, if you have to go in your room and do it by yourself because you're embarrassed of singing or whatever, making vocal sounds, it's okay. I mean, you're using it as a technique to help yourself memorize, and that's the difference. So give that one a try. I think that one's very helpful, actually. So in this video, I've showed you how to write it down. That's one method of going over the scale. Playing it on the guitar, so that's like the physical method, and then using your voice is the third method. So it's actually 3 different ways to kind of absorb this information into your brain and help you memorize it.